Hi, I'm Patricia.
And I'm Tony.
Join us each week for SailTrek, a look at the real Caribbean.
The people, the history, the culture, the rich mosaic of sights and sounds that make the Caribbean so unique.
SailTrek. Join us. Here aboard the Starflyer, the pace of life is wonderful, relaxed and mellow, but there's always a hint of excitement about what we'll find over the horizon. Starting with a jeweler who proves that one man's trash is really another's treasure.
When it comes to marine pollution, we know the main ones, the bottles, the bottle caps, all that kind of stuff that's on the beach. But the one that's not really mainstream is the ghost gear. What ghost gear is any type of abandoned fishing equipment, anything that may be used on boats, mostly commercial fishing vessels, that's either left out or lost in the sea. Now the damage that that kind of thing causes is that when you leave those things out there, namely fishing traps, lines with hooks, all those kind of things, it continues fishing. So you get all these fish who enter these traps, they get in these hooks, and then they just die. Turtles get wrapped up, all that stuff, it's just bad. So what we came out to do is, we go out to the beaches and then we collect all those fishing equipments like the traps, the ropes, all that stuff. We take it and then we turn it into these pieces that you see in front of you right here. The name of the store is KCs Closet, K-S-E-A'(S), Closet, so a bit of a double entendre there. And we're located at the Rudy John Beach Park in Labrie. And the main idea was to sell souvenirs, trinkets, jewelry based around marine life, marine conservation, that kind of thing. We have pieces like these are mostly rope, because on those larger boats, even the smaller boats, you'll get these ropes that the fishermen use to pull up their fish traps, or it could be docking lines, all that. A lot of that gets lost in the sea. Prior to the COVID-19, I was a captain, and driving all around, you see these ropes just floating out there, and then it could get stuck in your prop, it could ruin up your seals, and all that's a bit of an expense too. So, I would just collect them, and then we would come back here, and then we would create these pieces out of them. Pieces like this is made from more or less balloons and bottles that you'd use as like a bobber. Instead of letting the bait go down to the bottom, you leave your bobber up. But sometimes if you catch a big enough fish, it'll just rip the bobber off. And then balloons and that kind of stuff, we all know that turtles mistake the balloons for jellyfish. So it's not something that you want to let float out into the marine life. So I would still, once again, collect these and turn them into these little pieces right here. COVID, I would say, affected us in the sense that when you start a business, you identify a market. You find out who would you like to sell these things to. And really things like these, they attract more of the tourist kind of people from overseas. Now we all know with the lockdown measures, the confinement of movement, the tourism sector has really been suffering. It's picking up a bit now, but I would say that would have been the main hindrance to us. In terms of the mission of it, it's remained the same, to try to reduce the pollution in the ocean, to try to raise awareness. We're still trucking along full speed with that. It's more or less on the business side and the target market. Hopefully when things get a little better, things will pick up in regards to the movement of people, especially guests coming in and the tourism sector. We have a lot to offer, not only in terms of what we make, but what we have to say. Small islands like us, while we may not contribute so much to the pollution of the earth, we do suffer a lot for it in terms of our fishing. So many people are fishing, that's how they feed their families. And when we let these kinds of waste devices, especially from our fishing vessels, from our parties on the shore, go into the ocean, it just dominoes effect down to everybody. We need to be more conscious of what we do to the marine environment, and we have to reduce on all the negative things that we put in there.
We're aboard this magnificent tall ship, the Starflyer, a connection to an earlier time when tall ships ruled the seas. And as Jim Scott explains, traveling under sail leads to new adventures.
I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. Those words from the John Masefield poem, Sea Fever, capture the mystery and the attraction of sailing. These days, the sight of a tall ship slicing through the waves under full sail is one that is rarely seen, but one that, when experienced, is never forgotten. The experience of sailing on a tall ship like our wonderful Starflyer allows one to connect to a different time, when the exploration and mystery of the ocean fueled the imagination of what might be over the horizon. There is something magical about being aboard a tall ship under full sail. No roar of engines, just the sound of the wind, powering one's journey to exotic places full of sights and sounds only imagined before the voyage began.
Yeah, go ahead. So okay, I think it's okay. Yeah, that's correct. Do you go alongside?
Our journey is underway, but we know not where it will take us. But we do know that there are beautiful and wonderful places still to see and stories still to be told. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by.
One of the great things we find each time we visit someplace new are the fascinating and unique people we didn't expect.
Like the Coral Restoration Foundation. Here's the story.
For millions of generations, these coral reef gardens have flourished in tropical areas. They are the oldest and most biodiverse ecosystems on our planet. And this could all change in our lifetime. In just the last 40 years, Florida reefs have lost 97% of the once dominant elkhorn and staghorn corals. In the next 80 years, all shallow water coral reefs could become extinct. The speed and impact of such a widespread loss of life is unprecedented. Our reefs are dying. Something had to change. We are Coral Restoration Foundation, and we manage the largest active reef restoration program in the world. We employ a variety of techniques that allows us to monitor and ensure genetic diversity amongst our corals, and we are continuing to evolve and find new methods by collaborating with NOAA and other organizations. We start with our coral nurseries. Our coral nurseries are comprised of coral trees, a coral growth design pioneered by us that's proven to be twice as effective as other coral growth methods. In Tavernier Nursery, there are over 500 trees, equivalent to 1.5 acres, an area that's larger than a football field. With our 7 nurseries, we can produce 45,000 corals every year. Once the corals are reef ready, we reintroduce them to the reef in a process called outplanting. After chipping off the top layer of accumulated algae, a putty-like epoxy is used to glue the coral onto the reef surface. The clusters will grow together and form thickets, recreating the foundations for the coral reef ecosystem of the Keys. As of 2020, we have returned more than 100,000 corals to the Florida Reef Track, restoring an area of over 8,000 square meters. In the next few years, we will be working to restore more than 90,000 square meters. And this work matters. Coral reefs support 25% of marine life, sustain coastal communities, and have an economic value of over $10 trillion. The necessity of this mission is abundantly clear. And it wouldn't be successful without you. We rely on passionate and hardworking volunteers to help restore the reefs. And although our waters are warming and ocean acidity is increasing, the corals that we've returned to the reef with your help have been thriving. Florida reefs are healing. We believe that in the same way we are working to restore the reefs, others can find a similar way to help the world and its oceans. So find the cause that speaks to you and get involved. All ecosystems are interconnected and every positive action matters, be it big or small. We are a Coral Restoration Foundation, and we are dedicated to saving the reefs, one coral at a time.
Another great week of amazing stories that we enjoyed sharing with you. So keep the winds in your sails, and Patricia and I will see you soon on another edition of SailTrek.